things that we deal with, they don't think that we are capable of reading a book.
Hey, boy. It was a boy. I thought that was my name at one time. They called me boy so much.
And I could see no other reason for being ostracized other than that I was the only African-American firefighter in that station.
I had to prove myself because I was black, I was a female.
No, there's some stations that you still can't walk into where you won't get that dirty look.
There's a couple of individuals that I was confrontational. So I went to my dad. I said, I think I'm gonna quit. He said, you can't do that. You get ready to start something with somebody else. And that's when I joined the Valiants.
I always wanted to be a firefighter. Coming on the job at 33, this was my second career. I think it was the lights for every little kid on the ladder, on the engine, that you hear that siren and those lights.
They were advertising the Philadelphia Fire Department and saying that they needed for African Americans to apply.
The fire department called and said that I was had passed the exam and was ready to be hired for the next class and to go through the orientation process. And it's not something that I would have imagined at that time, back in 1974.
Well, back at that time, back in the early 40s, 41, 40, and 41, there weren't too many jobs around.
It first started out with me needing a job.
Every time I complained about my job, my wife said, the fire department's hiring.
Baby girl got pregnant, I needed a job with benefits, and I needed to have some more money coming in.
I was shooting dice on the corner with a bunch of brothers, and a brother walked up to us with some flyers. I actually threw mine away, but I lost my money. And then I picked it up and I called the number, and next thing you know, within a couple of months, I was up at Valiants Hall for one of their prep study classes that they do with civilians before we take the test.
The first African American came on the Philadelphia Fire Department in 1896. They would not allow him to fight fires. Only thing they allowed him to do was to work in the stable and tend the horses and clean the horses and shovel the manure from the horses. He was not allowed to go out and actually fight a fire. He lasted approximately 4 years. We don't know if he quit or he retired, but his name was Isaac Jacobs, and he came on in 1896. The second African-American firefighter came on, his name was Stephen Presco. And Presco was allowed to fight fires, and unfortunately he was killed early in his career when a building collapsed where they were fighting a big fire in Center City.
The Sam Singleton and the original members of Club Valiants, you know, they dug and they built a foundation.
A man called Sam Singleton.
We used to go to his house, the guys would meet over there, and they were talking about the other races had their organizations. And so they said, well, let's start ours.
He came to the station one day and he said, you know, when this station was all black, all the firefighters knew each other. They knew each other's families, they knew the children. Now you see a fellow on the street, you have no idea who he is. He said, I'd like to form an organization, a social organization, so we can at least know each other.
In the basement is where we had our first meeting, and that was to address these situations that were not being addressed by Local 22 or anybody else in the city.
It was about the fraternity and encouraging one another to deal with some of the hardships and indignities that they were incurring, but also to reach out to our own communities where most of the fire fatalities and injuries were occurring, to educate the African American community about how to safeguard their family from the ravages of fire.
The history of Engine 11 goes hand in hand with the history of America.
That was one of the ways that the guys always were together, because they all had to work at that same segregated firehouse. It was that and one fireboat that African Americans were permitted to work on.
Now, I went there in '59. At that time, it was integrated. It had a lot of members there, Caucasians that were there because they called it a Shanghai station. That was some of the fellows that were heavy or had maybe some other problems, including drinking problems. They were transferred to that station almost as a punishment.
We're here now in the old Engine 11 station. Seems it's been converted downstairs to a church. This used to be the apparatus area where they had the horses and old engines. Used to be a pole, and more than likely in this area above us were where the firefighters slept. Out on the streets of Philadelphia, there were alarm boxes almost on every corner. And that's how they would get their alarms. When they would come down out of this hole from the second floor bunk room, they have easy access to their gear. There was probably only one engine in here. Here's where they probably brought the horses back inside, through this entrance here, through that archway. And after fires, you would take your hose line and hang it up to dry.
New people were being hired. When we looked, we saw that there were only going to be 2 African Americans out of 99. We decided as a group, as an organization, that that was totally unacceptable.
The Valiants actually proceeded down the path of taking the city to court.
We didn't know what the ramifications of that would be.
And consequently, we were able to win what is called a consent decree. This was the beginning of having a larger number of blacks hired.
And it was actually an agreement that was arrived at between the city and the Justice Department, the state, and the Valiants organization to increase the numbers of African Americans within the fire department.
And the consent decree allowed more African Americans to come on anywhere from 1974, 75, 76, and 77.
There's been an effort by forces to get the consent decree thrown out.
Since it's been here, there's been people challenging it and wanting to see the consent decree abolished. We believe that there's still a need to ensure that there's a mechanism in place to ensure that you have a diverse department. And if it had not been for the challenge put forth by the Valiants, it's very likely that conditions would have continued to go forward as they were.
Oftentimes, if an African American came to a station without equipment, they would be sent back to their station to get their own equipment because they didn't want them using some white person's equipment.
The Caucasians wouldn't let you use their boots and helmets and stuff and all. You had to carry. And at that time, it's like I said, back in the 30s and 40s, very few people had cars.
I had my hat split in as a chief. I got shipped across the city.
Well, there was one member of the company. Every night, he'd open up the window and holler out there, "Good night, all you N-words and the S-words for Puerto Ricans."
They may come behind you and call you the N-word in your ear to try to incite you to fight so you would get fired.
And actually put a monkey on the top of the Christmas tree.
One of the individuals who was one of the instructors at the time wrote a letter and said that he didn't feel that the fire department would be safe with me being on the job.
We get to this lady's house, fire is coming out of the kitchen window. I remember like it was yesterday because it's ingrained in my mind. And this woman was standing in the door of her house with the kitchen blazing. I grabbed the hand line, I went to run to the door, and she blocked me. And her words to me is something that I will ever remember. She says, "I do not want any niggers in my house." And her kitchen is burning.
There were certain beds.
Many of the stations had what we call black beds.
Then there's one bed that was designated for blacks, for African Americans. That's the only place that you could sleep.
And that was the bed that usually the Dalmatians slept on.
I was sent to a station that was pretty much an all-white station. I went to that station that night. I reported to the officer, told him my name, told me to what assignment I had, and for the rest of that night, nobody in that station spoke to me. And if I went into a room, they would walk out that room.
So we developed a thing among ourselves, keep them walking. So we'd go to the front and stand at casual at the door, everybody drift to the back. Then we go to the back, sit down, everybody go to the front. So these are things that we knew.
So I wanted to get a cup of coffee. So I got me a cup of coffee, drank the coffee, went back to the sink, washed the cup out, hung it back up on the hook. This fireman got up, walked to my cup, took it off the hook, and threw it in the trash.
The issue became having to challenge folks that would say different things or treat you differently.
Racism went from being just blatantly overt to now covert and a bit subtle now.
Just being able to transition from firefighter to an officer has been very hard. A couple of days ago, my deputy chief, we pull on the fire ground. He looks right in my face, sees the company that I'm from, knows it, and then he asks the other guys behind me who are white, who's in charge of this company? So I look at him and I say, "Chief, I'm in charge." "Oh, okay, Derek, okay. I need you to do this."
When you get to graduation, you almost know your rank, because of the scores and the average you had. So I knew I was in the top 3. And they would call the names back until they get down to the top 10. And they got down to the last 4 members. So when they said the number 4 spot, I just stood up because I knew I had gotten gagged out of being in the top 3. And I should have been in the top 1 or 2.
Got promoted to lieutenant with just 3 years on the job. Got taken to court because I tied the white guy. Got promoted to captain with another 2 or 3 years. Got taken to court because they felt as though I cheated. Got promoted to chief with 13, 12 years on the job. got taken to court because of situations that sometimes the things that we deal with, they don't think that we are capable of reading a book and answering
Some of us have not forgotten where we came from, and we reach a hand back to pull up the people behind us. There's a picture that I have at home. It's called He Ain't Heavy. And what it depicts is there's a brother at the top of a wall, and there's a brother at the bottom of the wall. And the brother at the top of the wall reaches his hand down to extend to get the other one up. There's so many people behind us now, and we're basically like the middle part of this organization. And there's so many people that are going to be a big part of this future.
We just need to be able to evolve into the change and move with the fire department.
It's like everything, times change. But we don't know what's predictable and what's unpredictable. Things happen, but most things happen for the best.
Now we're at a point now where we just need to maintain that. Still fight for what's right within the fire department. And in my 15 or 20 years that I got left in this department, I will continue to do that because that's what we need to do, and that's what was instilled in me.
International Association of Black Professional Firefighters, that's the mother organization. We believe that we should come to the aid of our brothers and our sisters across the country to help them and share with them opportunities to help their communities as well.
There were 5 organizations on the East Coast that decided to unite.
And then when these guys met, there was one, Philadelphia was an original member, Hartford, Connecticut, Newark, New Jersey, White Plains, New York. And they came together and found out they had the same kind of problems in areas of hiring, promotions.
So we teamed up, and in '64, we filed a lawsuit in 5 cities at the same time with the same lawyer, and we won them all.
We've had development in what we call the Executive Development Institute, which is held once a year at a college.
We had workshops, and in these workshops, we dissected the job of the fireman and how to get promoted.
We stand on the shoulders of men who taught us how to study, how to prepare, how to present ourselves, how to sell ourselves as candidates to be respectable officers in the Philadelphia Fire Department.
The motto for the Executive Development Institute, when you go down there, you know, when everybody's in the auditorium, is all that I am, I owe. I live eternally in the red. So for me, it means that as long as I'm a firefighter, as long as I'm alive, that I'm always indebted to someone who came before me.
Not many organizations have that longevity and still have the effectiveness that our organization has. It's still trying to make a difference in our communities and professionally.
I'm proud of what we did, how we did it, and this has been 50 years, and that's been a long time for people to stick together.
Now when I think about 50 years, I'm ready to celebrate. I'm ready to lift those names up.
I feel like I have been a part of all 50 years because there's so much experience and so much knowledge from the people that have come before us, and they have been pouring into us younger people
It's very exciting for me to participate in this 50-year anniversary. I owe it to all of the younger firefighters, men and women that coming up and coming into this organization to pass down what was passed down to me.
All right, make sure you get my good side. Just being here and realizing that this is our 50th anniversary just makes me feel very proud to be a part of this organization and the things that this organization has accomplished. It's time to sit back and take a look at all the people that have lifted us up to get us where we are today, and also those younger people that are coming behind us that'll take us where we need to go in the future. I know for myself, as I walk around and speak to everybody and I see a lot of the retirees that are here, and realizing that I'll soon be part of that group. And I can remember back when I was a new guy and look at some of the young people that are here today, and knowing that each and every one of them has the potential to move the fire department forward as well as move the Valiance organization forward.
One word that describes what Club Valiant means to me, that word would be opportunity. And I say opportunity because Club Valiance allows me and its members the opportunity to reach greater heights, be of greater service, and have greater camaraderie and greater spirit amongst each other in the community at large.
My first thought was hope. Hope that we will be able to continue on the road that we've been on, to increase the number of opportunities out here in the community for people to join the fire department.
If I had one word to describe the Valiance, it would be tenacity. The fight is never done. We have to keep going against and fighting for equality.
Powerful. All of those things that work to give power to an organization.
It means purpose. We are meant to be here.
My word would be support, because whenever I needed it, they were here.
Proud. Proud to be a Valiant member.
Family. Family, we're a family. We argue like a family because we have so many different personalities, and we're all passionate about helping not just our people, but making this department a better department.
So I would have to say leadership. And I'll say that because those first members of the Valiants had to be leaders to want to take on the challenge of putting an organization like this together, knowing the fight they had in front of them.
Valiant, that means you're brave, you have courage, you have honor, and you're doing the right thing.